Is Elon Musk cash poor? Can you retire early with the cost of healthcare? And should my wife buy a $1,600 stroller? You're about to find out. Welcome to the Personal Finance Club show. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Jeremy. What's up?
We're back. All right. I need to start today with clearing the air. I posted a thread. It's like a tweet. If you're on Threads, it's like Meta/Instagram's Twitter. It's one of those things I was like half asleep and I was like, this is kind of funny. I'm going to post it. And then I woke up and like everyone was mad at me. And so I got to clear the air. I'm going to explain myself maybe. Or maybe I'll make it much worse and just this will be our final episode. And we'll have to
Not final, 6 and done.
Yeah, 6 and done. Hey, they say most people don't get past 5 podcast episodes. So we're already doing great.
Nice.
All right. So I tweeted like kind of a lighthearted, dry sense of humor take about a conversation my wife and I had one night. And it's 4 lines. It said, my wife, can we get a $1,600 stroller? Me, no. My wife, you've never told me no before. Me, well, I guess we found the line. And like, that wasn't the real conversation. But she did bring up the idea of a $1,600 stroller. And I think what I actually responded was, my last car didn't cost that much, which is kind of true. It was 2 cars ago and I sold it for $1,500. But still, it had like an engine and 4-wheel drive and, moonroof and,
I don't know. Strollers nowadays might have some of those things.
Yeah, I guess maybe that's true. But yeah, people are just telling me. One person told me that she should divorce me over this because I am
What?
I'm an authoritarian who doesn't let her, control her money or something like that. And, like me saying no was like me saying no with like a twinkle in my eye, which is like, you of course are going to do whatever you want because you're an adult human who does whatever they want. But like, come on, a $1,600 stroller. And so I do need to tell the story of the last time we bought a stroller, which is we wanted a Bob stroller. And you don't have kids. Do you know what a Bob stroller is?
Never heard of it.
Okay. It's like a jogging stroller. So if you think of like one of those really big jogging strollers with like bicycle wheels on both sides with really big wheels. Mm-hmm. And, these days, if you buy like the nice new one, it's about $600, which I thought was like the most you could spend on a stroller. How wrong I was. And then I was like, okay, $600. Come on, there's got to be a zillion of these on like Marketplace or OfferUp. And so a lot of them are really used, after 3 or 4 years of kids, they're just kind of destroyed. But I found one that looked basically brand new, and it turned out they'd never used it, and they're selling it for $75. And so it took me like a couple of days of watching all the listings, and I found it, picked up for $75. We've used it ever since. And so the fact that you can, you can get through a little bit of effort, instead of just, going on Amazon or going to Target and doing the easy thing, paying $600 plus tax and having a very nice stroller, I have a $75 stroller. And when I'm walking down the street with my Bob and someone walked down the street with their Bob, no one knows who paid what for it. It's
True.
The same. It's like, it was a little bit dusty because it's been in storage years. I cleaned it up, pumped up the tires. The thing looks brand new. And so, my conversation with my wife was not about what she's allowed to do or if this thing has value or not. I think for sure having a good stroller is important, but there's ways to like save tons of money without that much work. And, I'm a multimillionaire and still I'm like, the thought of just shelling out $600 without, looking at your other options is wasteful. And so it's not like you don't need a stroller. It's more like, let's, see what we need and see if there's other ways to like save some money. And that $500+ I saved on the stroller, that just goes right into our investments and keeps growing. So we are financially independent. And now we have both things, financial independence and a nice stroller.
And a Bob.
Yeah. My wife, I don't think is planning on divorcing me. And if she is, probably not over this conversation. There's much more worse things that she has issues with, I'm sure.
Oh, I honestly am guilty of wanting to buy things new, but I think there's places where I should probably be buying things nicer. Like I've been like the past probably 10 years, I've been so into fast fashion, and like a couple washes in something from H&M or Forever 21 and it's like ruined. So I think I could probably spend more on clothes, but less on like brand new appliances. Like maybe I could like search on Facebook Marketplace for like a NutriBullet instead of buying it brand new from the manufacturer.
Totally.
But I didn't do that. I bought it brand new.
I think that's a good point. And yeah, there's, you'd rather like buy nice than there's what's that saying? Like buy nice instead of buy it twice or something like that.
Never heard it.
Oh, well, maybe I just made up, or maybe I'm butchering some other saying, but for sure, I'd rather have fewer things and nicer things. Like one shirt you can wear a bunch rather than, like you said, shirts that fall apart. But I think with any time you spend money, I think we're all probably. I'm very guilty of this of wasting money. I'm actually right now creating a list of all the money I've just burned lately,
Mhm.
and I'm like the personal finance club guy. This is like what I think about all day, and I've like burned a lot of my just total wasted money, just like flushing it down the toilet. And I'm gonna make a post about. We could talk about in a future episode when I like add it all up. And I think just being more conscious of the wasted money is a really good way to build a lot of wealth rather than just always doing the most convenient thing, always just going to Amazon, going to DoorDash. Like I definitely do that sometimes, but if you can just do it a little bit less, that's like maybe hundreds of dollars a month that you're saving that can turn into millions over time. So
This is coming from a millionaire, y'all. Listen up. We love it. All right, so should we get into some segments?
let's do it. What are we doing today?
Do it. Okay, first segment. Explain it like I'm 5, or as we've discovered, maybe explain it like I'm 15, 16 by the time we get to the end of the topic. Today's question is something that maybe a lot of people who are interested in personal finance may have asked. What are bonds?
Bonds are that are so unpopular right now, but you hear about the word. You hear the word stocks and bonds, and I
Mm-hmm.
think we'll do another episode where we talk about stocks. We talk about stocks every episode, but what is a stock? But some people, I think, don't even know what a bond is, very reasonably, because why would you? Like, do we have the bond class in high school? No. That's why you're listening to the Personal Finance Club show.
Mm-hmm.
And in the world of investing, I think, is often the headlines are about very speculative things. What's the price of gold going to do? Crypto, meme stocks, oil. This is speculating what's going to happen in the future. Bonds are not very speculative because this is what a bond is. A bond is a loan. It's like giving someone a certain amount of money, a loan, for a certain amount of time, a term, and they promise to pay you back. So, like, let's say, Jen, you want to go buy a new Bob stroller because
For
just in
my
case,
non-existent kids.
just in case you have kids one of these days, and you want a $500 Bob stroller, and so you say, "Hey, I'm going to sell a $500 bond," and that basically is like a little piece of paper that says, "I promise you, I'll pay you back $500." So I give you $500. You give me back this piece of paper that's the bond, and then you say, I'll give you the money in 5 years from now, like after I've had kids or something. And so the term is 5 years. And so what happens? That's a transaction. You give me the piece of paper, which is the bond. I give you the $500. You go buy your stroller, do whatever you want, and then 5 years later, I can take this bond that says on it good for 5 years until a certain date, and give it back to you and say, "Hey, give me my $500 back," and you do. That is like the transaction of a bond. That's part of it. And you might be asking, okay, why would anyone do that? Why would someone just loan their money away for free for 5 years to
Right.
get it back? And the answer is they wouldn't, because during that 5 years, there's also a rate on this bond that says, hey, every month I'm going to pay you a certain amount of interest. The rate might be and it might not be monthly, it might be quarterly or yearly or whatever it is, but I'm going to pay you a certain amount of interest per year. Maybe it's 3%. So that means 3% on $500 is what? $15, right? Yeah, I did that math right in my head. No calculator. Look, here's my hands.
Come
And so that
on,
means,
math.
every year you're going to give me $15. So
Mhm.
I give you the $500.
Mhm.
You give me the bond, and then every year you give me $15. And then at the end of the term, you give me my $500 back. And so bonds are a way to basically put your money to work to be making money for you if you just so it's not sitting there in your checking account doing nothing. These days bonds are paying sometimes more like 4 or 5, 6 or 7%. 3% would be pretty low. Historically, like a few years back, it was more like 3%. And that's what it is. They usually come in $1,000 increments, not $500 increments. And they're usually not sold by people. They're usually not sold by Jen trying to buy a stroller. They're usually sold by governments or companies. And so the federal government, for example, sells lots of bonds. That's one of the ways they fund the government. That's the way they, pay back previous interest and do all these things that the government needs to do. And so they'll sell these $1,000 bonds. So a rich person could go to treasurydirect.gov, look through the list of bonds for sale, and buy them. And they would own them, and they'd give the money, and they'd get the payments over time, and they'd get all their money back. And that's a very instead of a speculative way to make money, instead of hoping gold goes up, instead of hoping Bitcoin goes up, instead of hoping oil goes up, that's a very responsible, conservative, safe way to make money. And basically, all investors believe that the US government is about as safe of an investment as exists because the US government has the power to make money and the power of the US military, yada, yada, yada. And so you're pretty confident, these days with the headlines you read in the news and the government being shut down and things like that, maybe not. And the reason the government's shut down is because, the Congress has refused to agree upon a way to keep paying back all these bonds, paying all our bills, right? But that's what a bond is. It's just a loan. You buy the bond, you get the piece of paper, and it's not a piece of paper anymore. It used to be. Now it's all done digitally, of course.
Mm-hmm.
You get your entire amount back at the end of the term, then you get paid along the way. And you can also trade these. So like, let's say you buy a bond with a 10-year term. 2 years in, you're like, okay, I want my $1,000 back now. You can sell it to someone else for about $1,000. It might be a little bit more or a little bit less based on what rates are doing along the way. But these things trade all the time. And, we're beyond 5-year-old explanation territory. But what normal investors do, like individuals like you and me, is we're not really going to treasurydirect.gov to buy individual bonds. It's just logistically inconvenient and complex. You're probably buying an index fund or a mutual fund or an ETF that owns a zillion bonds inside of it, and it automatically is collecting those payments from the issuers and is automatically, renewing them over time and buying and selling them as like the fund needs. And so you can basically get all the benefits of bond ownership, that growth of the income over time and the return of your capital without having to go manage them directly.
I love it. I feel like a couple of things that I've learned since working at Personal Finance Club. It's actually very educational to work here, by the way.
Oh, good.
In case anyone was wondering.
You want a job. We don't have any, so.
We have exactly one position, and I have it. I've learned that bonds are going to return a bit more than a high yield savings account usually, but less than the stock market. And that as you get older, you're probably going to want to invest more in bonds because they're more stable. They're, as you said, the government, we don't really know what's going to happen, but most likely you get a guaranteed return percentage as opposed to something fluctuating. So those are two things that I've learned from you directly.
100%. And young people, this audience is probably mostly young people. I think the typical listener is a millennial-ish, or maybe Gen Z-ish. And so the people hate bonds right now because rates have dropped, or rates have went up a lot the last few years. And when rates go up, existing bond values go down. And so if you bought bonds 5 years ago and you paid $1,000 for your bond, no one today wants to buy your crappy bond from 5 years ago because your bond didn't have a very high rate 5 years ago because rates were lower. So as rates go up, as they just have over the last 5 years, the existing bond values go down. You can always just wait. You can just wait out the rest of the term and get all of your money back as is guaranteed by your bond. But if you're trading bonds and you're watching the value of your bonds, like on your investment website, you're going to see that they went down temporarily. But they'll come back. And the opposite is probably about to happen as rates have just started dropping. And if they continue dropping, all of the existing bonds will go up in value. And so I kind of think that as goes pop culture and investing, the opposite is generally what is the right thing to do. And so right now, crypto, NVIDIA, big US tech companies are super hot because they have been the last 10 years. But is that what's going to be hot the next 10 years? I doubt it. I think we could be doing we're doing about 50 of these per year times 10 years. We could be doing episode 600 in 10 years from now, Jen. And we could be having the opposite conversation about how bonds were the hottest investment for the last 10 years, as crazy as it sounds.
Right.
But basically what you said is exactly right, which is people in their 20s, 30s, and really even 40s are like much more aggressive. Like, yeah, I want to buy the hot thing. I want to get really big. But when I talk to people in their 60s, 70s, and beyond, what they really want is to not lose the principal. They want to not lose the money they put in, which is what bonds are good for. They just generate income. They just pay you those coupon payments. So if you have a big nest egg, in our example is $15, but if you start putting zeros behind that, it could be $150 or it could be $1,500 or $15,000 or whatever it is. And then you can basically just live on that with a guarantee return of your principal at the end of the term.
Amazing. I feel like we're getting into like explain it like I'm 10 territory.
Yeah,
like I feel like a 10-year-old could probably grasp that.
Yeah, some of it. You
We're
know,
getting better. You're getting
talk
better,
about
I should say.
strollers.
You
Okay.
talked about strollers. Very relatable for me, a childless spinster. Okay. Let's move on to our next segment. Money, money. Can I ask a dumb one?
Are you going to ask a dumb person or are you going to ask a dumb question? Maybe both, maybe neither. It's kind of it's like kind of Russian roulette of personal finance question asking.
You really got to stop calling our audience dumb. This is
You
getting
know,
out of control.
yeah. Well, we don't know yet. We don't know what the question is, but the questions are never dumb.
Okay, this question is from Shannon. Shannon, thank you for writing in. You did a really good job at making your question nice and succinct. We appreciate that. People are getting better. We didn't have to edit this one. So Shannon asks, my question is about early retirement and health insurance. Although Marketplace exists, for now, it seems employer-associated policies are much more extensive in coverage and, of course, more affordable. Is early retirement realistic in a country with such expensive healthcare costs? What options do early retirees have?
Good question. Thank you, Shannon. So there could be an entire podcast about navigating the healthcare and health insurance system. And so I'm going to start with a caveat that I'm not going to solve health insurance for you right now, but I think I can at least tell you my perspective on how you could potentially retire in this health insurance world we live in. First, it is kind of weird in America that health insurance is so tied to your employer and whether or not they choose to offer health insurance and what health insurance they choose to offer. You know, other countries aren't like this. It is kind of strange that if you switch jobs that you won't be able to go to the doctor. That seems like a wild thing to me. And so I think decoupling your health insurance from your employer isn't necessarily the worst thing in the world. Another thing is you mentioned that employer-sponsored health insurance policies are generally better or more extensive than the Affordable Care Act. And I don't think that's necessarily true. Employers generally don't get some crazy deep discount on some much better policy. I think they generally are navigating a very similar market to you are if you go and try to buy a policy directly. Of course, they can like negotiate a deal with the health insurance provider if you have a big group, but like that's essentially what the Affordable Care Act is negotiating with the healthcare providers for the biggest group, like all of Americans. And so it just feels a lot cheaper and maybe more safe as an employee because your employer is paying a lot for it. So, for example, you might go and pay $1,000 a month for a health insurance premium if you go buy it directly. But if your employer buys that exact same policy, they might just decide to pay 80% of it for you. So they're writing the check of $800 a month or $9,600 a year for you, leaving you to only pay $200. So $200 a month versus $1,000 a month sounds amazing, and it is, but it's really just essentially coming out of your salary. So, you know, for example, if the employer had $90,000 of budget to hire you and they put $10,000 of it towards your health insurance, then your salary is going to end up being $80,000, right? And so it feels a little bit better because it just is happening behind the scenes and you just see what you see, which is your end of the day salary. But it's not magic. It's just the employer paying it. So that said, you know, what do you do if you're faced with this like $1,000 a month premium? And I'll tell you what I do, which is I just buy it. You know, I went to healthcare.gov. This is like .gov shout out day at a personal finance club show.
We love the government.
Yeah, I know. This is a government episode. Yeah, but I went to healthcare.gov and you can search based on your state. For me, I'm in California, so actually I think it redirected me to covered California. For your state, it might be different. Then you can see all the prices, you can put in your details. And for all of its failings, the Affordable Care Act did some nice things. One, it gave you guaranteed coverage, so you can't be denied. Before the Affordable Care Act, if you had a pre-existing condition, you were just out of luck. You would just be left to die or go bankrupt or whatever. It's guaranteed to cover essential healthcare, things like hospitalization, prescription, maternity, mental health. There's income-based subsidies, and so that's one option that you might have as an early retiree. If you retire and your income goes to zero, then you could potentially get the Affordable Care Act health insurance for close to zero. I am an early retiree, but I just have so many investments and money out there doing stuff. I didn't even really bother trying to get the subsidy, to be transparent. And I feel like maybe it's not really in the spirit of the rule to have a wealthy person like myself try to not pay the insurance premium.
Right.
So I just pay it. You know, when I was single, paying just for my own, it was around $400 a month. Now I have a family of four. It's around $1,500 a month, which is an eye-watering amount of money. But things cost money. You're going to need a certain amount of money to live, whether it's 40,000, 50,000, 60,000, 70,000. You might need to dedicate $10,000 a year to covering your health insurance premium. And that just needs to go into the calculation of when can you retire. So if you're trying to, get your investments to generate $50,000 a year and you haven't accounted for health insurance yet, maybe it needs to be $60,000 a year. It's not good news, but it's not impossible, right? It's just a different number. So, and the other nice thing, I didn't finish this list about the Affordable Care Act, is that there's an annual out-of-pocket limit, meaning in the early days, when I used to buy health insurance for myself pre-ACA, the insurance would cover you up to $1 million or something. So if you get cancer or hit by a bus or something horrible, you might go to the hospital in the ICU and burn through $1 million of coverage in a week or two, or however fast it happens. And then beyond that, the health insurance just stops paying. They're like, we did our job. There's your $1 million. Now you're on your own. Now there's an out-of-pocket max, which is once you, and for us, for an individual, it might be like $8,000 a year, or I think for a family, it's like $16,000 a year, something like that, which is obviously a lot of money, but it's not millions of dollars that you're on the hook for indefinitely because you got a very serious illness. It's just a reasonable amount of money. And so again, as an early retiree, you might have an HSA or a high yield savings account or an emergency fund where you can cover your annual out-of-pocket max if you need to, and then still be able to kind of rest easy knowing that a serious illness or injury or whatever isn't going to literally bankrupt you and drain your retirement. It's just going, your insurance covers it now. So as expensive as it is, that's what you're getting for. You're getting that insurance, and that's kind of what insurance is for the big bad thing happening. So, apologies on behalf of the health insurance world because it is a gigantic mess, but it's really not that hard to go to healthcare.gov, buy one. It's just kind of expensive.
Yeah. Interesting takes. I think that we can all agree that insurance is just very confusing. I actually have insurance through SAG.
Oh, that's awesome.
Because I write music, and sometimes that music goes into commercials, and sometimes those commercials are union. And so I made enough money to qualify for that, and it's pretty affordable. But my best friend works for one of the big insurance companies. I won't say which one, but even when I ask her, she's confused. So knowing somebody who's been in this industry for 5 years at that company and still has questions, and sometimes calls me to ask questions about the laws in California, because she'll be serving people in California. She's a social worker. I'm like, the fact that you have to call me, a layman, and ask about what the laws are in California, it's not readily available, tells you how confusing insurance is. So I think that, like you said, the research is available for you. You just have to kind of do the work and try your best to get the plan that's best for you.
Yeah. It's rough out there. And don't feel dumb because, like you said, nobody understands this stuff, and we're just all trying to do our best. And it's just incomprehensibly confusing, and this is covered, this isn't. And, my general strategy is I generally go for the lowest premium. I try to pay the least out of pocket I can. Yeah. And the difference in your out of pocket max doesn't change that much, if at all. And so you're still on the hook. You have to pay more throughout the year, for appointments or whatever. But I'd rather just keep the money in my own account. I use an HSA, a health savings account, to put any extra money I have to cover those medical expenses beneath the out of pocket max. And then beyond that, that's when the insurance kicks in. So.
Yeah, like you said, it's for the just in case, because I feel like I'm a relatively, knock wood, healthy person. And so I don't generally use my insurance a lot. So it's just making sure that nothing crazy happens, because medical debt stinks.
Yeah. Let's never speak of health insurance again. I hate it.
Okay. I don't know. We might get more questions. Shall we move on to our next segment? Scroll Patrol.
Scroll Patrol.
Let's go. Okay, so to preface, there's a lot of financial influencers, I'll say, out there, like yourself, and I don't know the rules on who's your arch nemesis, who do you like, who do you enjoy their advice. So hopefully this is cool.
And to that point, these are legitimate, genuine reactions. I have not seen this before. Jen picks these, I watch it and react in real time. It's terrifying to me because I don't know either. And so we're about to find out.
Okay, go ahead and click on that.
My car payment used to be $350 a month when I lived in San Francisco. Do you know how much I actually paid out of pocket? Over $1,000 a month. Listen closely, because almost nobody counts in all the phantom costs of the purchases you have. My car payment was $350, but that does not include gas, maintenance. I paid, I think, $200 a month in parking. Parking tickets, you should include that too. If you get any, that's a phantom cost. Registration, insurance, all of it. And if that is how much my car payment was, imagine how much the phantom costs on a house are.
So that is Ramit Sethi. Sethi. I am not sure if I'm pronouncing his last name exactly correctly. He's not my nemesis.
Okay. Also, I feel like you should do
basis.
more walking videos. I was very engaged. You should do some of those. That was cool.
Oh, really? Okay. Such an easy, yeah. It was, yeah, if you're just listening, it was Ramit walking through a city talking about car payments, of course. And yeah, not my nemesis. I would say probably of all the financial people out there, he is who I'm most aligned with in terms of philosophy. We both, and on this topic, especially things like cars and housing, it's just so easy to look at part of a payment. You know, this is what my mortgage payment will be. This is what my loan payment will be. This is my lease payment will be, whatever, and ignore all that other stuff. And what you should really be looking at is like total cost of ownership, you know, including depreciation, like all the stuff you just mentioned. And so I love that. I love when you talk about this stuff. It really ruffles feathers because people don't like having like the mirror held up to them and saying, you know, they want to live in this fiction where anything over the car payment doesn't exist. And if, you know, of course there's rationalizations like, yeah, you're gonna need gas anyway, but like maybe not. You know, he said, I forget his exact numbers, there's $350 a month, but I went to 600 or whatever it was. You know, for $600 a month, you might have options. Like maybe you could bike to work sometimes and take an Uber sometimes, or you could take public transit or get a cheaper car. And I think what happens a lot these days is people will get like a $700 car payment, which sounds outrageous. And then when you include what he was just talking about, it takes your total cost of ownership up to maybe $1,000 or $1,200 a month. And they could maybe have a total cost of driving a car of $200 or $300 a month, like I have with many used cars I bought in my life. And that's a massive delta. It's like $1,000 a month difference, right? So I grade these scroll patrols on an A through F, F being like, this is absolute nonsense, and A being like dead on. I'd give this one an A, maybe an A plus. You know, it's exactly right. There's nothing really controversial here. I think absolutely you should be looking at total cost of ownership and all the other phantom costs associated with anything that you buy, not just trying to live in this fiction of kind of just barely make this payment, because that's how you're going to stay broke when all these other costs, you know, invariably crop up.
Okay. Shout out Ramit. Shout out, and a couple more shout outs actually. Number one, to my brother who loves Ramit. He is a huge fan, and I think that you two are aligned and that you two would actually get along in real life. And
Let's
number
meet.
two is to my car, Rhonda the Honda. Actually, the third shout out will be to my mom, who gave me that car for $1, sold me that car for $1 when I moved to California.
Tax fraud.
Just it's on the record too. And I had to pay to ship it out here because I was not driving across the country in a 2008 Honda Civic. But I've been in California now for 5 years. My mom had that car for probably like 7 or 8 before me because it was used when she got it. And I thank God every day for this car. Just like rub the little dashboard. I'm like, thank you, Rhonda, because not having to pay a car payment is so clutch. And I hope I never have to pay one again. Hope that Rhonda just lasts me for another 50 years.
Yeah, that'd be nice. Yeah, yeah. No, it was 2 cars ago, but I drove it from 2010 to 2016. Was a 1999 Ford Explorer. I paid $3,000 cash when I, kind of like you, I moved to California, went to Craigslist. You know, it was like, I kind of wanted a Toyota just for reliability, but the Toyotas were like twice as much money, same make, mile, years kind of equivalents. And so I bought a Ford Explorer for $3,000. Once a year or so, it had a mechanical problem, and I took it to this guy named Dave, and he charged me $500, and he fixed the serpentine belt or the fuel pump or whatever stupid thing went wrong in these cars. And, you know, it was a little bit inconvenient, but my total cost of ownership on that car over the 6 years I drove it was probably about a couple $100 a month. You know, $500 a year for those repairs. That is less than $50 a month in repairs. There was no car payment. The depreciation was only $1,500 because I bought it for $3,000. I sold it for $1,500 6 years later. And it was a great car. You know, people are so emotional about cars. You know, they're like, oh, I need to like project success, or girls aren't going to like me, or yada yada yada. Like I took girls on dates in that car. They thought I was cool. You know, like if a girl literally was going to look at my car and say, this guy's not cool. He drives a very clean, well-maintained like SUV. Like, you know, that's kind of a lame
Now,
girl,
what
in my
car
opinion.
did you have? Did you have that car when you met Andrea?
Ah, I might have actually.
Okay,
Well, because
so
we
it
met
works.
and then we started dating many years later. When we started dating, I was driving a Mazda, a Mazda CX-5. It was much more new. It was like what I bought after I sold the Explorer.
Okay,
So
all right.
is she just a Mazda chaser? We'll never know. You know, she might just be one of those.
Yeah, your lawyer wife.
Right, yeah. My private practice, owns her own practice attorney wife. She sees a Mazda mini SUV driving by, and she's like, "How do I get in that passenger
that
seat?"
guy, right?
Yeah.
Okay, amazing, cool. Well, shout out to Ramit. Good job, A+, I believe. Let's get into our final segment of the episode. Money. Jeremy had time today.
Oh man, and did I need time today, because I posted a post on Instagram that was titled "How Rich is Elon?"
Went viral,
and it went viral. I think this counts as viral. As
like
of
80,000 or something.
82,000 likes, 3,600 comments.
Damn.
I think it's it has about 5 million views. That counts as viral. Sure.
I feel like, yeah, you know, in the personal finance world.
Relative to our average post, it's definitely viral, which is maybe speaks poorly of our average post. And so yeah, just to describe this, if you're watching, you'll see it scrolling by, but if you were listening, it's a bar chart. It says how rich is Elon, and these bars go horizontally to the right. And the top line is median family. And it basically compares Elon Musk's net worth to all these different net worths. And the median family net worth in the US right now is 193,000, which isn't even a pixel on this. It's like so small, it isn't even a pixel.
Right.
And a lot of the comments, this isn't even the comment I had time today for, but a lot of comments were like, how is the median income 193,000? And the answer is, it's not. This isn't income, it's net worth. Net worth is all the stuff you own minus all the stuff you owe. And so the median American maybe has some equity in their home, owns some cars, has some retirement accounts. You add all that stuff up, as about 200 grand. They're not making 200 grand a year. Median income's, I think, closer to like 70 grand or something like that.
Okay.
And then it says millionaire. Then it says, this one's also interesting. Then it says the top 0.1% American. So if you're in the top 0.1%, you have $62 million. Again, you're not making $62 million. You have $62 million. And that also is not even a pixel. So
crazy.
Imagine a bar chart where you can't even see it because it's not even a pixel, $62 million. But then you start scrolling, scroll. You used to scroll 10 times before you get to Elon Musk's net worth that just crossed recently $500 billion. And so I think this is done well because big numbers like this are so hard to wrap your head around. A billion is 1,000 millions. 500 billion is 500,000 millions. So when you multiply those numbers, 500,000 times a million, that's how you get to 5 billion or 500 billion. And so you can't even wrap your head around that until you start scrolling. And you're like, okay, I can have $62 million, be able to buy any house, any car, travel, like, be in the top 0.1%, like the rich of the rich of the rich, and not even be a pixel compared to 10 pages of scrolling for Elon Musk. And so people see this and it's like, I think it starts to put into perspective. But what did I have time for today? And actually, we have two of these. Do you want to read them? These two comments kind of encapsulate what was a really common theme in, I don't want to over stereotype these commenters, but I'm going to say kind of bro-y dudes. They might have been in a frat. They probably make 40 grand a year and fancy themselves financial, aficionados. And so they pointed out what, Jen?
Okay, so let me read this first comment. It says, you can't eat equity. Great visualization. Love these, but he doesn't have that sitting in cash. And if he liquidates, number one, the value will tank. And number two, he will get the ever-loving beep taxed out of whatever he gets out at. Do you want me to read the second comment too?
Yeah,
Or you want? Okay.
read them both.
All right. They say, guys, he doesn't actually have $500 billion in a shipping container. It's all in the value of the things he owns. He borrows money using his Tesla stock as collateral to live on. He is asset rich, cash poor. I don't think Elon is cash poor, but okay.
Well, that's what I want to talk about, because both of them are basically saying the same thing. And to be fair, I think there's a hint of truth. So if you Google Tesla stock today, the share price is $433 a share for Tesla stock. And that price is basically the price at which the last share traded. So for example, Jen, you and I went to the New York Stock Exchange and we wrote down a little deal between us and said, hey, I'll sell you my share of Tesla and you buy it. We, agree on $435 a share, then the share price becomes $435. And so when we say he's worth $500 billion, we take the number of shares he owns in Tesla, which is a ton, multiplying it by the most recent share price that the most recent transaction happened at. And that's how we get the $500 billion. And so both these commenters kind of have a point, which is he doesn't have the cash. We're just assuming that share price is good for every single one of his shares. And that can't be true because, like the first commenter said, if he liquidates, if he goes to the New York Stock Exchange and sells all of his millions of shares, the price will tank and he'll get the ever-living bleep tax out of them.
Yeah.
But is that true? And my answer is no, that's not true. And I'll tell you why. Because Elon Musk can sell his stock. And you might say, no, Jeremy, that's what I said. They can't. It's all this like vapor money. It's just this multiplying of money. But here's what happened in 2022. On April, and I know this because this is, since he's an insider, since he's a, executive level C guy, whatever at Tesla, he has to report all of his trades. He can't trade in secret. When he buys or sells stocks or gets equity grants or exercises options or whatever you do with stock, he has to post it publicly to the government, which is very readily accessible if you just Google it. And I'm going to show you that here. So on April 26th, 2022, Elon Musk sold some stock. How many shares did he sell? 109,000 shares. The share price?
That's a lot of money.
$904.
Oh my God.
And you multiply it together, on that day, he sold $98 million worth of stock.
Crazy.
And so this cash poor guy, in one instant, basically on this one day, he sold $98 million. And then that money was literally could have gone to a bank and taken the cash out and put it into a shipping crate, or more likely just held it into his checking account or whatever, right? But he wasn't done on that day. He sold again. He sold 84,051 shares. The average price, $905. And look what happened between his first sale that day and the second sale that day. The share price went up. And so even though he sold $98 million worth of stock, it didn't crater the share price. In fact, the share price went up for a second sale. And the value of that sale was over $76 million. That's 2 in one day. You may say, okay, now we're at 98 million plus 76 million. We're at $175 million in that one day in cash. Cash, mind you.
Not cash poor.
Not cash poor. But wait, that's 2. Over the next 3 days, April 26th, 27th, and 28th of 2022, he did 214 such transactions. He sold 214 times, all sales. The starting share price, $904. The ending share price, $853. So, okay, it went down. It was about a 5% drop, but that's over the course of 3 days. If you look at the range, over those 3 days, this 214 sales, the share price range was $822 to $999. His average sale was at $902. So in these 3 days, he took out of the stock market $8.5 billion in cash. And the average price at which he sold his stock was 0.4% lower than the first price at which he sold his stock. So these commenters who said, this is vapor money, this isn't real, he's literally said cash poor, Jen.
Crazy.
This man has $8.5 billion in 3 days in cash that he monetized. And the price dropped 0.04%. Do you think that a 0.4% price drop to get $8.4 billion in cash represents the value tanking?
No, absolutely not.
I don't think so either. That seems incredibly stable for a very speculative stock like Tesla, right?
Right.
And wait, he wasn't done. That was just in April. In August, a few months later, he sold $6.9 billion of stock. In November, he sold $3.9 billion of stock. In December, he sold $3.6 billion of stock with hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of these transactions all sell, all cash in his checking account, totaling up $22.9 billion worth of stock. And that's cash, right? And so this idea that he is just, you can't eat equity, he says, you period, can't period, eat period, equity. This man, in the course of a few months, and a few days in the case, had $22 billion of cash. You could literally buy the most expensive everything on earth and still have about $15 billion left in cash, right? So no, it's just simply not true, because Tesla is a massive company and has lots of liquidity. And so when you are comparing, and a lot of these comments said things like this, like, oh, it doesn't count because he doesn't have it in cash. He can have it in cash if he wants, right, as I've just demonstrated. And rich people generally don't keep their money in cash. Even people as, me on that bar chart, I'm right in between the average American and the... Right, it's less than the pixel.
Poor Jeremy, can't even see it.
Exactly.
You see mine. But you can't see Jerry's.
We're all the same compared to Elon Musk. We're not even a pixel, right? But, I don't keep my money in cash either. I keep it in stocks and bonds so that it goes up in value.
But I have a question about that.
Yeah.
Because, I know Elon is very volatile, so maybe you don't have an answer for this. But is there a reason, specifically those first 3 days, did he just want to become richer and look richer on paper? Is there a reason he took out that much? He sold that many shares over the 3 days and then did it again a few months later. Do you know why?
Do you know why? Is this a rhetorical question, or are you not sure?
I don't know why. I'm thinking he's not very reasonable. So I'm wondering if that he just was I want to be richer. I want to I know he just became the richest man, and it's been between him and another person for a few months or whatever, weeks. Yeah. So I didn't know if that was part of him just trying to become the richest man in the world or whatever it may be.
So there's a very specific reason, and the reason was he bought Twitter.
Oh, that was when he bought Twitter.
Yeah. He made, this is kind of...
How much does it cost him?
So I think, now I actually didn't research this at the time, but I think the Twitter purchase was around 40 billion.
Okay.
And 20 billion of that or so, he just paid in cash with a wire transfer out of his checking account, right? And the rest of it came from loans and investors and yada, yada, yada. He did some other stuff too. And so, this idea that, this, he's doesn't really have that much money. That's no, he does. And if he wants to do something, if he wants to buy the biggest yacht ever created, it's, I think, $3 or $4 billion. He can sell that in a day and buy the biggest yacht. So the man's not cash poor. If he wants to do something even crazier than buying the biggest yacht, he wants to buy entire publicly traded companies like Twitter was at the time and control media and decide how people are allowed to share their thoughts on this formerly publicly traded company. He can buy that. It took a little bit longer in the day because there's, moving pieces to, taking a company private like he did. But
people thought he wasn't going to be able to do it, and then he did. Yeah, right. It's crazy.
So I saw so many comments like that, and these drove me nuts because, no, this man has $500 billion, and that's real. Obviously isn't being held in cash as today, because that would be crazy. No one would do that. Yeah. But when he needs it, he has the power, control, cash, whatever he needs.
Yeah, I think you can call Elon a lot of things, but you cannot call him cash poor.
Yeah, cash poor was yeah. And also, I don't think 500 billion would fit in a shipping container. 500 billion is a lot of money. Even if there's hundreds, I think you would need a shipping freight, an entire freighter. We could
need
do
to
that.
Get a visualization. I'm sure someone can tell us how much space would $500 billion in 100s take up.
That's my job. I'm going to do that. That's my next post.
Okay, great.
All right. So that was my rant. But it is really mind-boggling that you can just literally press sell on 109,000 shares 200 times over the course of 3 days and walk away with $8.5 billion in cash. And that was even half of what you did that year, right? So you can convert stock to cash. Pretty crazy. There's liquidity in the market.
So wild. Okay, you definitely had time today. We are actually going to read some reviews before we get out of here today. We've been getting reviews. We have 5 stars on Apple Podcasts, only 5 stars. Hallelujah. And so we're going to read a review or two. And if you are listening and you're enjoying the podcast, leave us a review. On pretty much anywhere you listen, you can leave a review. We've been reading Spotify and Apple Podcasts. So I'll read this first one from Apple Podcasts from Jojo Trick 7 with an X. Jeremy and Personal Finance Club are the reason I felt confident enough to start investing in November of 2021 at 35 years old. I took the original course, notes and all, and immediately opened up a Roth IRA and signed up for the 403B at my job. I have maxed out my Roth IRA yearly since and contribute to my 403B on a bi-weekly basis. I also learned how to essentially create my own portfolio to mimic a target date index fund since they were not offered as options in the 403B plan. Oh, and he's pretty funny too. What?
Oh my gosh, Jojo, I love you. I literally, when I'm sad, I go and read reviews and I filter for the ones that have the word funny or hilarious, and then I make myself feel better.
That's guys, you want to boost Jeremy's ego? Call him funny. He loves that.
Thank you. I know.
Okay, and I want to do another really quick one. It's from Bob1 on Spotify, and it says, Jeremy and Jen, nice job. In parentheses, Jeremy's dad.
Thanks,
really
Bob1.
I have beef with your dad, though, because he only put one N in my name. I'm going to leave it alone because, he left us a good review. But, Bob, next time, 2 N's.
I mean, I think that might
Mr.
be the
Bob.
least of his typographic errors. At least he doesn't sign all his text messages from Dad. Thanks, Dad, for the nice review. And thanks, Jojo. Yeah. So if you want to leave us a review and help spread the word, and yeah, Jojo, it's like there's so many reviews like that. People who literally went from not understanding this stuff at all to literally being on the path to multi-million-dollar status. And it literally I've said literally way too many times in this paragraph, but makes me very happy.
We love to see it. Okay, well, that's all that we have time today for on the Personal Finance Club show. Thank you for listening, and we'll see you next week.
And don't forget the 2 rules of Personal Finance Club. Rule number 1, live below your means. And rule number 2, invest early and often. See you next time.
The Personal Finance Club show is produced by Jeremy Schneider and Jen Mundia. Music by Esabalu and Homie. Send your questions to podcast@personalfinanceclub.com. The Personal Finance Club show is co-hosted by Jeremy Schneider, who is a co-owner of Nectarine, an SEC-registered investment advisor. The views expressed on this show are those of the hosts and guests and do not necessarily reflect the views of Nectarine. Please refer to hellonectarine.com for all relevant disclosures. This podcast is for informational and educational purposes only and should not be construed as personalized investment advice or a solicitation to buy or sell any security. Listeners should consult their own financial, legal, or tax professionals for advice specific to their situation.